Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey Podcast. I'm joined today, and as always, with my good friend, my business partner, the dear Mr. Jason Neal Patrick Harris Johnston Yellen. Hi, Jason.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to our listeners.
That's right. It's 2024 now, isn't it?
It is pretty wild having our first episode of the calendar year occur on January 10. That's a long way into the year, but here we are. This is it. So, we've spent 10 days saying Happy New Year, but we haven't yet said it to the listeners. So.
I'm going to front load a little bit here, and it's actually a connection to our 2024. One of the things that we all struggle with, and here I am now 50 years into this struggle. You're 49 years into the struggle. And the struggle is that with every new year, as you're signing documents, signing a check, signing whatever, you invariably put the date and then the previous year down because you spent a year
very much so
writing that previous year. And in the news that we're about to share, which is news that really I think a lot of our listeners have heard, since January 4, which is that Single Cask Nation has been acquired by Artisanal Spirits Company. During the signing of these documents, I was a bit nervous that I might type 2023, but thanks to the vagaries of modern electronics, DocuSign preloaded 2024 while we were signing this paperwork together to join the Artisanal Spirits Company portfolio. I feel like we finally cracked the code.
Oh, I kept changing all those 24s to 23s.
Oh,
was I not meant to do that? I thought AI was taking over the world and I wanted to fight back.
Don't you dare get that date right. I'm going to fix that for you.
Yeah, so that happened. Yeah, that was last week was a pretty wild week and exciting. And here's the thing I kept saying, and I've said this to a few people at Artisanal and Steve Hawley and Jess Lomas and even in the interview with Mark Gillespie over at Whiskey Cast. But the levels of enthusiasm surrounding this announcement were incredible, absolutely incredible. And to know that we've built a nation that is so supportive of us and our selections and our relationship with Jess and the next chapter. And it's interesting. There were a couple of times I saw end of an era. And I thought to myself, I've been there as a consumer. I've been there. And we address it in today's interview with Andrew Dane, CEO at Artisanal, where you see a buyout, or sometimes it's a buy-in, and you say, well, that's not going to be the same. And you're probably right. It's not going to be the same, but it might be even better. and the way that we're looking at this, you and me, and Jess is looking at this, and Steve Hawley's looking at this, and we'll have a day coming up soon where we'll have Jess and Steve on the podcast, and we'll have some chats. We'll circle back to that after the interview. But the four of us look at this as a springboard to even better things. And that'll be better in America.
Yep.
That'll be better in what we've historically called ROW, the rest of the world. But what we really mean is it's going to get even better globally.
Yes.
That is exciting.
Yeah, I saw the same. For the most part, everybody's positive. Some people a bit tentative,
tentative is fair.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is this going to mean? And the simple reminder has been, Jason and I and Jess, we're going to be still in charge of the brand, still in charge of the cask selection, still, in charge of, are we re-racking some of this liquid, right? Are we maybe talking to some new distilleries and bringing new distillate on? Like all of that we had previously done, we will continue to do, but there's something that I want to add to this, and I thought that this was interesting, and I wanted to share it with our listeners and as well as our nation members, because I realize a lot of our listeners may not be nation members. Not yet, but here, come on in. Joining ASC, and we talk about it a bit in our conversation with Andrew Dane, gives us access to a lot of liquid that we hadn't previously had access to. And you and I have already gone through a number of casks to make selections for a future release, both for U.S. and what we would call ROW, rest of the world countries. And we selected 9 or 10 casks so far. And one of the things that I absolutely loved after reporting the casks that we said yes to was the warehouse manager saying, well, can I understand the reasons you said no to these other ones, right? Because they want to understand our palates. And that, to me, is so incredibly key, because what do we always say? When you buy whiskey from an independent bottler, you are buying whiskey that bottler has said, I love this, I want to share it with you. There was no way we would sign over Single Cask Nation to another entity to then say, no, now you guys pick it. No, this is still us. And what's more is they care enough to say, well, why did you say no to these? I want to understand your palate. And it just shows that, like, that's day one of our working relationship. And I just thought that personally speaking, I wasn't even going to share this, but I wanted to. Personally speaking, I tip my hats to Artisanal Spirits for asking that question, because it's important. They want to make sure they're doing right by us and understanding our palate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, even to the point of I wasn't going to share that. I had the conversation with Tamara last weekend where that was the very point I brought up to her, which was, it's not just a what are you selecting from these current casks, but why did you not select the other ones? And again, to reiterate a point you were making a second ago, this doesn't stop us, Single Cask Nation, from going out and finding fresh collaborations. And the work that we've started with American Single Malt Whisky will only continue. And to that point, with Steve Hawley coming on board, Steve is the president of the American Single Malt Whisky Commission, right? Steve Hawley is going to make it even easier for us to find new collaborators in the world of American single malt whiskey. And so that's what I mean. Is it the end of an era? Okay, it's a chapter. When you pick up a book, it has multiple chapters in it, right? It doesn't mean the 14th chapter is not as good as the 3rd chapter. It's just part of the natural evolution of the book. So I am, and again, Mark Gillespie said that last week in the interview we had with him, where he said, you guys sound excited.
It's because we are. Yeah, it's really exciting. And it's interesting, having that I just listened back to that conversation with Mark, and his questions are so short and to the point that it almost takes you off guard, and you have to pause a little bit to get that right answer. And I really appreciated the way that he posed his questions. It allowed us to think about it a little more. But Listen, before I go on with that, there's one point that I think is important to point out, is the answer to that question of why did you say no to these. It should be made very clear. It's similar to why we say no to certain casks from various distilleries. Sometimes that liquid is not ready, or it's doing one thing rather than multiple things. It's not that it's bad whiskey. It's that either A, it doesn't fit our profile, B, maybe it needs to be put into other wood to bring out other flavors. Maybe it just needs a bit more time. One of the things that, and we mentioned this in our conversation with Mark, one of the things that I found so intriguing was all of the samples we tasted through when we were at the offices of ASC, was that sample after sample after sample was intriguing and interesting and unusual and fun. And then you have to get down to the work of what would we bottle, right? And so now we get to tell them, hey, we said no to this one because we thought it could use a bit more time in wood, or we said no to this one because we thought it could use some sherry to bring out some fruitiness, or vice versa. So I think I just want to be very clear about that. We hadn't tasted a single sample where we said, ooh.
No.
No,
but I think to your point is that's the journey we've always been on, and I would, if I was wanting to leave somebody with a one sentence takeaway before we hop over into this interview, we remain a whiskey focused business entity, independent bottler. It's still whiskey first and foremost, and that is not changing and will not be changing. And that is why we're so excited to go forward into 2024 and beyond.
A whiskey company that focuses on good drinkers and good sharing whiskey.
Absolutely.
All right, with that, let's hand it over to Andrew Dane, CEO of Artisanal Spirits Company.
Andrew Dane, we're coming together here on a particularly busy day, and we really appreciate you taking some time away from fielding calls and texts and emails about Artisanal Spirit Company's acquisition of Single Cask Nation. But before we get around to really unpacking that and delving in much deeper, I just want to say hello and Happy New Year.
Hello and very Happy New Year. Can't think of anything better to do than spend some time chatting to you guys.
So you, sir, are the CEO of Artisanal Spirits Company. And that's the capacity in which we've known you through all of our meetings in 2023 that led up to our January 4 announcement. But you haven't always been artisanal. You have lived a life before that. Can you give us a sense of Andrew Dane up to and including artisanal?
From birth.
Yeah, of course.
From birth.
From birth all the way, chronologically. And you'll be tested on this later on. Yeah, of course. So I mean, my kind of potted career history started out of university without any particular idea about what I wanted to do. I studied maths, 2 degrees in maths, in fact, since I loved it so much. A degree in maths from Newcastle, and then a degree in financial maths in Edinburgh. So obviously that's the natural choice to move into whiskey. But in the meantime, I went and I actually spoke to my mother, who was a careers advisor, and said, I don't really know what I want to do. And she recommended joining one of the big companies' kind of graduate programs. Continuing to learn, get a qualification, a chance to work with lots of businesses. So I joined KPMG. So one of the big 4 kind of accounting firms. I had no idea what accounting was when I joined them. I had no history in accounting or debits or credits or any of that stuff. But it did exactly what she said, a chance to get a professional qualification. So I'm a chartered accountant. but worked with loads of businesses. Must have done over 100 different deals over 8 years there. Bit of time in Edinburgh, bit of time in London, a couple of years in Toronto just after I got married. Brilliant. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. It was an amazing experience, and you got to see huge, fantastically well-organised businesses and some at the other end of the spectrum. I remember going for a deal, and we were in Aberdeen, lots of oil and gas businesses, and it was an offshore rental business. And we arrived on day one and asked the guy, what sort of asset tracking software do you use? Do you have a customised bespoke system? Do you use an Excel spreadsheet? And the guy just looked blankly at me and said, I just look out the window, and if the yard's full of stuff, bad times for business. If the yard is empty, good time for business. So we saw all kinds of stuff. But yeah, gave me a chance to go and travel. Lived in Toronto for a couple of years.
How did you like that?
Brilliant. Great. I think agents day just got married. We had visitors about well over a year out of the 2 years that we were there. So I think other people enjoyed it. I think other people enjoyed it too. Stayed downtown. A great city, lovely people. It took a while to get used to the idea that they don't really have sarcasm. So when people say something, they mean exactly what they say. That, as a Scotsman, that takes some getting used to. Oh, the weather outside's lovely. You look at it and you think, yeah, it is. I don't understand.
But also not something we normally get to say in Scotland.
Exactly, not something we get to say, which is all the more reason it tripped me up. So I loved that. Brilliant experience. Came back to Scotland because I wanted to start a family. And while it was a great job, not particularly conducive to young family life. So I had my first son early 2014. Nice. And then really through went all in for that. So my daughter is 7, so she was early 2016, and my son is 6. So it was a glutton for punishment. But yeah, so that was my move back to Scotland, and I joined a business called Argent Energy, which is a biodiesel manufacturer, turning waste fats and oils into renewable fuel. So brilliant. A business that you can totally believe in, you can get behind, all about reducing the world's carbon footprint. A Scottish business that had grown fantastic, and I'd done a few deals involving them when I was at KPMG. And brilliant, something that was great. Not a lot of overlaps with the premium direct-to-consumer whiskey industry, but growth businesses and all the fun and pain that comes with growing businesses. So that's what attracted me to this role. The opportunity to come and join Artisanal Spirits Company and Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which were growing businesses. So I moved across in August 2020 as finance director. With an idea of joining a growing business, and it's all the fun. I think it's the mentality of growing businesses of let's try that. It's new. Let's go and give it a go and see what happens. So joined August 2020 and spent first couple of years as finance director doing an IPO. So Artisanal Spirits Company listed on the stock exchange in the summer of 2021, which is a true once in a lifetime experience. Something I have now done once, so never need to repeat. But it gave us lots of money to go and do all the things we wanted to do, like build a warehouse and cask storage and buy some spirit and all the rest of it. And I'd had some experience of doing deals from an advisory perspective from when I was at KPMG. So I thought I knew what I was getting myself in for.
Yep.
I now understand why no one at the company's ever replied to any of your emails during the deals, because they were just far too busy to. So I've now seen it from both sides.
A couple of quick questions before we springboard off into life as CEO of Artisanal. But in some corners, the podcast has quite an academic following. And you're throwing around maths degree, and financial maths degree. Could you? What the heck happens in a financial maths degree? And please don't feel like you need to spend more than 30 seconds answering this question.
Nobody's allowed to send in puzzles or questions to me afterwards. It was in my dim and distant past. The honest answer is I reached my academic limits. I'd really enjoyed the undergrad and flew through and went on to do financial maths, which is a kind of mixture of some things which are applicable to the real world that I really enjoyed. Things that I could actually see. And I've sort of used understanding business performance and share price movements and giving you tools to understand those things. Some things like linear programming were far too... Just I couldn't get my head around what it was we were trying to achieve, and that told me it was time to finish studying and go out and actually try working. I enjoyed the experience of being a student in that last year, but didn't perform.
Were you engaged in things like financial risk or risk as it applies to decision-making processes? Is that a part of
certainly a bit
maths?
of that, but the financial, the mathematical modelling of it. Of risk management, rather than the bit I actually enjoyed more, which is the business assessment of risk. When is risk good?
Yeah.
This was more about being able to quantify and understand risk, whereas the bit I quite enjoy is saying, well, okay, but that's a risk we should take or not. We now understand enough, let's go do it, or we should steer clear of that because it's not worth it. And I think it's that latter thing that is more enjoyable. The first part found a bit too academic.
Yeah, that's very cool. I like that application. You know, even for me in philosophy, it was the application of philosophy that was more interesting than just the esoteric ivory tower kind of mental, waxing lyrical kind of stuff. One more follow-up question, then I will give the floor to my fellow gentleman here, and by which I mean Joshua Morrissey Hatton.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the clarification.
So, one of the things for us in whiskey, in the whiskey industry, in whiskey business, is we talk about the passion. We talk about the belief, right? We're getting out there and we're excitedly communicating whiskey and single casks and flavours. And I'm curious in hearing you talk about biodiesel and kind of an environmental business. Was there any of that over there? Were you finding that those who were passionate were at the front of the charge here and presenting that, but there's still a business component to that where just the passion alone doesn't make sales or make success?
Exactly. I think you need both. I think to love coming to work, and particularly love coming to work when it's hard, when there's tough decisions made, that's when you need the passion. Passion to me is the difference between hard work and stress. If you feel that passion, if you feel that love, that connection, you don't mind working hard or doing the extra bit because you want it to be a success. Yeah. And that comes from caring about what you're doing. But you need both. It's you can't just be passionate about I love skiing. Skiing is my absolute thing. If someone could offer me a career in how to make some money from skiing, I might go after it, but I haven't seen it yet as a career. I don't think I'm quite of the standard that's needed to make any money from people watching videos unless you've been framed. So you need that combination. You need that combination of things. And that's certainly something I saw in spades, in particular in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, but across the whisky industry, is people absolutely love it. They care so deeply about it, and that's a great place to be because people are making decisions from the heart and their head together. It's lovely.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
let's hear it, Hatton.
Well, I've got a few questions, but you just said something that's going to have me front load this question before I ask my bigger question. What whiskey do you put in your flask when you go skiing?
Well, you gotta know I'm a big Ardmore fan. So that was, as I could see Jason nodding away in the background. That's what I have in the hip flask. Although, to be honest, this might be heathen to say, but a couple of Van Shows, maybe a little Bailey's hot chocolate on the slopes is all part of the mix as well.
No, that's perfectly acceptable.
He's a man of the people.
Yeah. I was worried for a second there that we were going to have to end the interview immediately, but I approve of all those. But I am curious to know, however, what your own personal whiskey journey looked like prior to joining ASC, and since joining ASC, and really having access to some of the world's most amazing whiskeys. Like, how has joining ASC affected your own personal whiskey journey?
Material. I mean, it's completely incomparable. My life before ASC and SWS, I'd had the same 2 open bottles of Bowmore on my shelf for well over a decade. Embarrassingly, maybe a bit more, as an 18th birthday present. That I just never really got into. I could never get there. My first experience of the society was a little while before I joined, and it was a bottle called Shed Soup. And the tasting notes on it said something like spending a lazy afternoon in your greenhouse with a newspaper and sweets while you admire your new shrubbery. Now, first of all, as a Monty Python fan, any shrubbery reference immediately has my attention. But I thought anything that tries to use that as a way of trying to describe the experience of it's got my attention. And opened it, and I was hooked. It worked. It sort of transported you to that place. And since then, I've been hooked. So I've gone from those 2 same bottles to I've now 20, 30, maybe a little more open bottles at any one point in time. I like trying the variety alongside each other. I'm not of the industry. I don't have the kind of technical history. I couldn't tell you why I like the flavours. I couldn't tell you how the angle of the line arm has influenced the flavours or the cuts has impacted it. But I can tell you what things I love. So I love that light, smoky peat rather than the kind of heavy medicinal peat.
Okay. Hence Ardmore.
I really like the sweetness of a sherry. I quite like a sherry bomb as well. But getting into that variety, what I've learned the most is I just love the experience of trying something new. So getting the chance to try such a wide variety, and there's only been 1 or 2 that I've gone back and managed to find a second bottle of, but it's one of the beauties of the society, and Single Cask Nation too is, it's a beautiful thing, and you have to treasure and enjoy it, and not be sad when it's gone. Think of that as the chance to go and discover the next one. So
I have to go on.
No, I was just that's it. It's sort of taking me on that journey, and now. To my wife's consternation, the shelves are filling with a growing variety of bottles.
It only gets much, much, much worse. It's my wife just complained as recently as yesterday, and that was hot on the heels of the day before that. So, no, I just wanted to point out that we have the most wonderful coincidence happening in February. The first online release we're going to have in the US as a part of the Artisanal Spirits Company family. I'm getting used to saying it. I've been saying ASC, and I'm trying to use the full words for listeners. I'm going to transition to ASC real soon in this conversation. But our first online release as a member of the ASC family will be an Ardmore 25-year-old single cask that has, and please don't take this the wrong way, Andrew, nothing to do with you, and nothing to do with this acquisition, and nothing to do with SMWS. It was on the books, it was scheduled, and here it comes. The first glass of whiskey we shared with you in Edinburgh was an Ardmore, and I think 25.
It was indeed. And a cracking dram it was too.
And the first dram I had with you in America, Andrew, was an Ardmore 25. It is
I'm noticing a theme here.
It's remarkable to have it.
Although I'm pretty sure we ended that night with a 30-something-year-old brandy, which was absolutely phenomenal. So it's another one of the other joys of getting to try some of the other amazing spirits that exist, and that's really stuck with me. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I think I shared a photo of you that I had a dram of that on Hogmanay this year. Last year.
You did indeed. Your reception of that 1989 Single Cask Nation cognac, or an unnamed region in France, was really wonderful, and I'm glad you've continued to enjoy it since then as well. But imagine having an Ardmore 25-year-old thread through what we've been doing together.
Wild.
Let's keep that one going.
So
it's on wax.
A question that I've got, which I think is likely a question many of our listeners have, is, why is the acquisition of Single Cask Nation by Artisanal Spirits Company, and I'm going to switch to SCN and ASC eventually too, but we're incredibly excited about this new partnership, about joining the family, but it'd be great to hear from your own perspective, ASC's vision of us and Single Cask Nation joining your family, and what that does for Artisanal overall.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I think it's really important to note a big part of everything I've done and everything the business tries to do is investing in people, and I think really important is the two of you. The two of you are Single Cask Nation, and you've been a joy to work with today, and really looking forward to actually now working together as part of the same wider family. So we get two joys: one of working with you, but also with the business. And I think first of all, Single Cask Nation's purpose, what you're trying to do, is so strongly aligned with our own. The Artisanal Spirits Company purpose is captivating a global community of whisky adventurers. Now, we do that, I say, by revealing the magic of that amazing, outstanding whisky. If you then look at what Single Cask Nation is trying to do, you began as a fellowship, a society organised around that right to purchase rare, fine, amazing single casks, but it's more than just a club. It's a community. You want to take people on a journey. You want to bring them new flavours, new experiences.
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're trying to do. And historically, we've done that primarily through Scotch Malt Whisky Society.
Yeah,
but it's such a perfect fit because your purpose is so well aligned with our own. It's also why we found it so interesting, so compelling, because the proposition, what you actually then do about that, how you go about fulfilling that purpose, again, fits so well with our approach. Your members have that exclusive right to buy the world's finest, rarest, amazing single cask whiskies and other spirits that have been personally selected by the two of you using your own refined palates. That you select the right ones, and those unique ones, I think you used the word like snowflakes. Each cask is unique. Once it's bottled, it's gone forever. And again, that's so well aligned with our own expertise, our own approach, our own proposition. So it's such a perfect fit. And then on top of that, we get the joy of the two of you joining the team, and then the 10,000 nation members as well. So it's win-win-win. And Jason promised me another unending supply of 25-year-old Ardmores. I'm pretty sure you committed to that.
I'd be happy to keep going with the 25-year-old Ardmores. And that's certainly been one of the things for us. I was first part of SMWS in the late 90s as a student at the University of Aberdeen. Something Jess and I share in common. We've mentioned in other places. We both came through University of Aberdeen, and when you're in the northeast corner of Scotland, you better be drinking whiskey because you're going to need something in your bones to keep you going. So, and so learning about a society, right, meant a lot. And then when I moved over to the US, my mother and father-in-law actually signed me up as a member of SMWS at my request. Hey, would you help me join this? And so they signed me up for that. I still have my member card. I still have my tie pin. So watching the building of that society was hugely important. Once we then got to our own portion of Joshua and I writing blogs and working closely with the SMWS and tasting samples and putting those in front of our readers, the idea to create a community that resembled what we were doing on the blogs, what we were seeing with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, was very natural to us.
Yeah, for sure.
And we jumped into that and built the nation. And the nation has been incredible and kind and wonderful and responsive and supportive. And it's to see these now coming together in 2024 is honestly remarkable. And if you told me this in the late 90s, I would have not entirely believed you. So,
and just let me just add on to that. For me, and maybe the same was true for you, Jason, moving to the U.S. and having a new community to deal with. No, I take that back. You had a whiskey society that was local to you. You could do tastings. Yep. And I didn't have a whiskey society. I tried to grow one, but I couldn't. And so having access to SMWS early on, I felt like I was a part of something. And being introduced to it by Jason and then by the earlier importers of it into the U.S., it made me feel like I was part of something connected electronically, unfortunately not locally. Yeah. And so to start Single Cask Nation with this idea where we're forming a community that is potentially made up of people like me that just simply didn't have that physical connective tissue, but the connective tissue through whiskey and laptops and such, it just made sense to build the nation in that way that was community-focused, connected through whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, let me bring two threads together here as well, Andrew. So we've got the biodiesel and the whiskey industry and the passion, and you're hearing Josh and I, and you've done it yourself here, talk about society and nation and people and community, but you're also the CEO. You are the man in charge of the bottom line. You are the man working through spreadsheets and working how money gets spent. How do you balance those two responsibilities, one as a passion and second as a CEO?
Yeah, it's certainly a balance. I mean, ultimately, as I say, the purpose of the business is what matters. It's that captivation, that global community. But we do that by creating and selling outstanding, one-of-a-kind whiskies and experiences around the world. And we've got an ambition to create a business which is high quality, but highly profitable and cash generative. And I think it's okay to talk about making money, because that means there's more money available to invest in great whiskey, great people, great experiences. So I think it's okay to talk about making money. What I think is important is that I truly believe that we can only do that by delivering the world's best whiskey experiences. Now, importantly, those experiences don't mean everything needs to be Disneyland and fireworks. It might just be having a dram by yourself or with friends at home. That is a whiskey experience to me. And it's only by delivering those great experiences that I think we can do that. And that's what's so captivating about SMWS and Single Cask Nation. I mean, SMWS now has 40,000 members around the world. Now, we obviously want to spread that even wider. But we can only do that if we're creating something that people love, that people want to enjoy and want to enjoy together.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Yeah. Beauty.
Yeah, that was the part. No one told Joshua and I that it was okay to talk about making money in this industry. Like that's the
Yeah.
Wait a second. We're meant to make money on this?
I'm just learning this today, Joshua. I'm listening to a CEO. I'm learning a whole lot today.
Yeah.
This is like going back to school. We missed our financial maths calling.
Yeah, that's it.
So with the addition of SCN to the ASC team, and by now our listeners have caught on. SCN equals Single Cask Nation. ASC equals Artisanal Spirits Company. How?
Just wait till we start dropping in SMWS and JGT and all the rest of the.
Oh man!
RESPECT.
Yeah, that's it.
I think our listeners are going to have two questions, and I'm not going to be selfish. I'm going to lead with the non-SCN question first, and I'm going to lead with the SMWS question first. With SCN joining ASC, what does that mean for SMWS? Does that change what's going down with SMWS, or does that expand it? What does that look like?
In practical terms, I don't think it does. Not from a kind of members engaging with the society, continuing to go to those great events, to get the chance to buy amazing whiskies, primarily Scotch whiskies. It really doesn't impact those. I think behind the scenes, the more people like the existing team and like you guys who are passionate whiskey lovers, passionate whiskey experts that we have within the broader ASC business, the better it is for every part of that. Now, that's not necessarily any changes to the day-to-day, the specific bottles or the route to markets or any of those things changing. But in general, the more people talking about new distilleries that they've discovered that were great, or amazing whiskies they've tasted, or fantastic experiences, the more of that we have together, the more everyone's experiences are improved. But in practical terms, it really doesn't have an impact. I mean, I see Single Cask Nation and SMWS as like two siblings, both with the same drivers, or let's say moral compass, but with very different personalities. So I think that allows them to go and continue to do the things that they're already doing really well, rather than trying to change them. You have been successful because of what Single Cask Nation is. And I think the role of ASC in this scenario is to give you more support, more resources, more people to bounce ideas off, more financial firepower to go and buy great spirits and so on, but to fundamentally allow you to go and do the things you're already doing, but even better, to give you the time to focus on making this the success that it can be. That's where I see ASC kind of help you. Similar in SMWS, giving it the chance to focus on the things it's best at, and really accelerating that. I want to take SMWS to as many members as we can around the world. I want the ability to get Single Cask Nation bottles in front of as many people, so that they all get to share the joy of enjoying a dram.
It'd be wonderful to add some more countries to where our ROW, which is going to be a bit more specific in 2024.
Yeah,
but those global opportunities and the places where Jess is sending us and representing us, and I'm looking forward to adding more countries to our listing.
100.
Well, exactly. I mean, we already in, I think, about 30 countries at the moment. So overnight, that opportunity to reach more people, bring more people into the nation, get Single Cask Nation bottles in front of, and then to create more amazing whiskies for you, so that even more people get to share them. Those two things, overnight we can help with, while allowing you to do the things you want to do. Choosing the whiskies is great fun. We're not going to take that away from you. That's the personality that comes in the society. That's the bit you want to do.
Yeah, and that's, today when this news went out, one of the number one questions, at least that I've been fielding, and Jason, maybe you have a different story, because I know some people reach out to your inbox or my inbox, and the question is, so what does that mean for Single Cask Nation bottling? So, who's going to be in charge of that? And the answer was nothing's changed. Yeah. Jason and I are still picking casks. Exactly. And Jess is helping pick casks, and
exactly. I've got a really strong view. I mean, you guys are Single Cask Nation. I mean, you continue to source, to select the whiskies, to tell the stories about those whiskies, with the support from me and the rest of the ASC team behind you, to give you additional support and resources. But the key thing, I think, as I said, is about investing in the right people. That's you. Why do that if you're not then going to trust you to continue doing what you've been so successful to date with? So it's a no-brainer for me.
It's actually one of those interesting parts here, and I'd be interested in your KPMG experience of this as well, is oftentimes, and we've talked about it in the podcast and in previous episodes of Extra, where as soon as you hear about corporate takeover or a corporate purchase, the people who have been with that entity all the way say, oh, this is bad. Oh, it's not going to be the same. It's over. It's going to change. And so to hear the CEO of ASC say, well, why would we invest in something that's working and being successful and then change the way it's successful doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. We heard the same things about SMWS at the time of the IPO. And bizarrely, an IPO was an opportunity for everyone to invest. And actually, about 10% of our members in the UK bought shares. So it became more egalitarian. More people were owned it, got to be part of it. But this idea that, well, now it's a big corporate beast and everything's going to change. And my main two comments were, one, previously we were owned by a private equity firm. Now, typically, they get the worst rep. In reality, our experiences were fantastic. They were completely supportive. They gave us all the time, the space, the money to go and invest in all the casks and so on. But the second is that exact point you just talked about, Jason. Why would we change what has made us so successful?
Yeah.
You want to do something like this to make it more successful. You want to give it more space. And for us, the IPO was about raising money to go and buy more whiskey, buy more casks, build a cask warehouse and bottling plant and so on. It wasn't about changing what made the society so successful. It might be spend a bit more money on marketing so we can tell more people about it, but why change what is at the heart of what's made it a success to date? I mean, that's very much my view here.
Yeah. Great to hear.
It really is great to hear.
It put us at ease in 2023, and it continues to put us at ease in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, I think about the way that we've been running Single Cask Nation for just about 13 years. We're in our 13th year, but we haven't completed 13 years just yet. But let's call it 13. It's our bar mitzvah year. Yeah. But it's always been led with ideas and sort of doing interesting things and telling unique stories, and to be able to continue that with your backing. Especially at a time right now where access to liquid has been reduced, cost of liquid continues to go up. Now we're able to do what we've been wanting to do with fewer barriers going forward, which is really quite nice and quite special to us.
Yeah. And I think that storytelling really resonates even now. So even where cost of living and people's ability to afford to do things, people want the experience that comes in. It has to be about more than just a product. It has to be the story and the experience and sharing that with other people. And I think that's why Single Cask Nation has been so successful to date, because you bring the story, the unique story of each whiskey with it, and people can kind of connect to that storytelling, and then they get to have the whiskey too.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. Again, we've talked about it on the podcast along the way and over the years, but we agree with you, and that's the language we use, where we tell a distillery story. along the way, story has sometimes been co-opted by marketing departments, and story becomes something separate from the whiskey. And I think those who follow independent bottlers, those who purchase, enjoy, and share single casks, are looking for a distillery story. They're looking to learn more about the whiskey and the people who make the whiskey, and they don't want to know about insert, Highland story here about X, Y, and Z. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus today. I've made a resolution for 2024. And so, we do want to lead with the stories and talk about the people and other communities that are producing whiskey as well that we're able to share. Not too long ago, we had a conversation with Pocono in New Zealand, right? We're talking about what are they trying to achieve in New Zealand? What's important there? What do raw ingredients look like? And so that's important. That's vital. That's what we mean when we use story. And I know that's what you use. That's what you mean when you use story.
Exactly. And that story gives you a connection to it. It allows you to kind of really engage it more than just the taste level. You are actually having an immersive experience because you're understanding how that product's come to be, its history, its journey into the glass, and that gives you a greater connection. So it's easier to enjoy.
Yeah.
Can I ask a semi-probing SMWS question?
Of course you can.
Just with the idea of using a numerical system to represent your distilleries, which I think has always been such a brilliant idea, because I know my favorite numbers, right?
Yeah.
35 is up there. 125 is up there. 3 is up there.
See, I'm now a 3 fan in a way that, as I say, 2 bottles on the shelf for it. Now it's a 3. I've got a bottle on my shelf now. I love it.
Actually, the first time Jason came to visit me, this was 2010, 2011. He stayed over the house, and we woke up early in the morning, and we're talking about what Single Cask Nation could look like. And I broke out a bottle of 3 point... Oh, geez, I don't know. Insert 3 numbers here. Yeah. And it was breakfast whiskey, and it was the perfect whiskey for the morning and the conversation and the things that would then come. But how does representing your whiskeys through a numerical system affect the way you tell the stories about the whiskeys you bottle?
Yeah, it does. Because of that disconnect in the numbering. What we want is people to enjoy all of the elements of the history of the bottle equally. So we want them to know the age, the region, the cask type, the distillery, but all as factors that come to play to influence the whiskey. Not, this is a linkwood, and therefore immediately your expectations point you in a direction.
Yeah.
It's one of the factors, the features of this is it was distilled at Linkwood. One of the factors is it's 12 years old. One of the factors is it was finished in a, Oloroso. All of those bits become pieces of information, not I like Macallan, so all I'm going to drink is Macallan. It becomes a feature. So we always try to continue to tell that distillery story separate. So we do talk about the distilleries, but when we're describing that bottle, we don't want it to become the dominant feature, which it so easily can be. But you can't hide it. It shouldn't be. It needs to be on the bottle because it is one of the important factors about the bottle. It's just not the only important factor about a bottle. Does that sort of make sense?
It does. I've got a follow-up question with regards to numbers, because I know in some cases you've got distilleries that produce peated and unpeated whiskey. So Tobermory that produces Lechig. Yet I know they retain the same number. So how do you communicate those sorts of differences? And is it just through tasting notes, or just curious how you do that?
Yeah, that's more of a challenge, and particularly a business which is often described as a 40-year-old startup. Consistency isn't always applied. So there hasn't always been a hard and fast rule which has existed forever. So inconsistencies do creep in over time. Now, something like Tobermory and Lechaig, there is such a clear and distinct difference that you usually don't have to do too much to help point people in different directions.
Sure.
But particularly where you've got places where Loch Lomond, the number of different styles, the varieties that can be produced there are astronomical.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily make sense to have 200 different distillery numbers, but you do want to celebrate the fact that they're not all just the same. And that's why I think the numbering, even the numbering, can say, well, it was distilled there. I've got a bit of an expectation about what that's going to be like. So it's not a very good answer, but I'm just going to be honest about that.
I was just getting into that, and then it ended.
However, I'm connecting what you're saying to something you mentioned earlier, which is the consumers of your whiskeys, just like the consumers of our whiskeys, and now our whiskeys, are whiskey adventurers, right?
Yeah.
And they're going into it understanding that this new bottle will be a new experience. And I would argue that those that are purchasing our whiskeys are those that want to be taken off guard, that it's okay not to approach a bottle with specific expectations because they're expecting a right turn and we're going left here. And that's kind of
expect the unexpected.
A special thing. Yeah. Yep.
Back to Monty Python.
Exactly.
No.
That's just right. And I think what you're trying to do is straddle that line between taking people on a journey, giving them new experiences, catching them off guard, giving them something surprise and delight, something they wouldn't have expected. Little tricks like, using ex-peated casks to give a kind of essence of peat to distilleries that don't produce peated spirits. All kinds of things in that mix. But also, we want to take people at all stages of their journey, not just the aficionados who already know what they're doing. We want people who want to go on a journey but are only taking their first or second step and giving them some tools, so like the flavour profiles that we use, little tools that kind of help give some steer, help give them a kind of first step. If you've tried something like that, maybe something else like this might also be of your something you might like to try. It's going to be different. You're going to try something new, but those first little baby steps, giving them a safe space into which to navigate. Yeah, I mean, a bit like on your own bottles with the kind of what do we call it? The kind of
the flavometer.
The flavometer. Again, just giving people some clues, but a broad direction. It doesn't tell you what the whiskey's going to taste like. It doesn't tell you how you're going to enjoy it or not, but just giving you some extra tips and clues and steer that might direct you to ones you're more likely to enjoy. But I'm sure the nation members, a bit like the society members, it's very rare for someone to say it's a bad whiskey. They just say, that one's not for me. That's not the flavour profile I like. So the more you can avoid those things, the better. That better answer.
Well,
Excellent.
Well, and I think to the point you were making a second ago, both of you, is I think it's sometimes too easy to fall into the pattern of following the same numbers, right? Like, that 35 is probably going to do quite well. I have 35333 right next to me on my desk, right? And it's absolutely cracking. But it's also fun to stumble into a 68, a 102, right? Yeah. Like, those are kind of nice moments as well. And I think the attraction is exploring and allowing ourselves to experience different flavours along the way. So I like what you're saying there. I totally buy into it. Yeah. You'd been saying earlier, Joshua, that we were getting emails and texts and different questions coming in from people. One of the questions that we have seen the most is, what does this mean for Jess? And we are excited to see that question. We are happy to see that question. And one of the things to make crystal clear is Jess remains a part of Single Cask Nation. Jess remains working in concert with Jason and Joshua.
Yep.
So just as we were saying a little bit earlier, Jason and Joshua are Single Cask Nation. Jason and Joshua are calling the shots at Single Cask Nation. The shot we are calling is Jess remains with Single Cask Nation. That is a big one. And we will be hearing more from Jess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that allows me to tease into, we will be hearing from Jess in a future episode, along with a name that is no stranger to listeners of the podcast. We have had a lot of fun with him in a range of episodes. And I was about to mention his name a moment ago when you said, Andrew, that not everybody likes the same whiskey. But you just maybe come in and you say, that whiskey's not for me. And I'm in no way suggesting the same is true for this person. But the first time we interacted with this person at Westland Distillery was the first time we chose a whiskey for Single Cask Nation that we thought would be a take it or leave it, love it or hate it. And it was a heavily peated, sherry matured 3 or 4 year old.
2 years old.
2 year old Westland. And it was cracking.
Yeah.
But those who liked it loved it, and those who didn't like it really didn't like it. I'm not going to use the word hate because it's 2024. Really didn't like it. And so we are beyond excited to be working closely with the man, the myth, the legend, Steve Hawley. And so do you want to put a few leaves on those branches to give us a bit more understanding of Steve's role, because Steve will be ASC.
Exactly. So I first met Steve. I think must be almost 2 years ago now. Maybe a little bit more actually. 2.5 years ago, summer of 2021. Wow, time flies when you're having fun,
right?
And obviously, immediately kind of hit it off as someone who is. Again, super passionate about whiskey, comes at it with that attitude of being on a journey, wanting to try new things. I mean, I talked about having a couple of dozen bottles on my shelf. I know his policy is that he should have no unopened bottles at home. So as soon as he has a bottle, they're all opened. Now even I can, and here's someone who has. I don't know, but I'm probably going to throw him under a bus here. I must be a couple of hundred open bottles of whiskey, so it must be great fun to go around for a dram at his house. But and we've been sort of talking to each other for a long time. And Steve has so much insight, knowledge, connections, and some great ideas. I'm really excited to have him as sort of part of the ASC team, and. For me, as we've talked about, you guys are Single Cask Nation. You get the chance to get the support, the resources to really give it its full chance, its best chance of success. And part of that for me is making sure there is support in the US to help with that. So having Steve working alongside you, I mean, I know you've got your own kind of shared history, and I'm sure you'll talk about that in a moment. But from my perspective, having that. Amazing individual, great experience as part of the team makes it even more of a slam dunk, and also gives us the opportunities to see how we can expand ASC in the US more generally. Yeah. So it's great for us.
In his role as president of the American Single Malt Whisky Commission as well, we talk to him regularly about the rise of American single malt whiskey in the US. We talk about the impending ratification of that category in the US. That's exciting, especially with the work we've been doing at SCN with Incomplete Joshua Hatton list coming up, VDC, Balcones, Westland, Westward. Help me out, Joshua.
Copperworks.
Like cobble works. He's like, no, Jason, you just keep going. You're driving the bus over yourself, mate.
Keep digging your
You're
grave.
doing a
Go ahead.
fantastic job. And so, yeah, as we are releasing those single casks from those distilleries and telling those stories, but also telling the story of a category that is being born whole cloth in front of us. Like, that's hugely exciting. So to work even closer with Steve on that is beyond cool.
Yeah,
Some might say
you
pretty
talked
wild.
earlier on about kind of why is this sort of partnership a match made in heaven? Why is it such a? I think that you're so well placed to take advantage of that opportunity in American whiskey, a space in which you already have some presence, and with Steve as well, as you say, bringing his experience from the commission into a category that just has some fantastic distilleries and so much potential. And I think the timing is so poignant. It's so well placed. I just think this is exactly the right time.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly.
Yeah, having Steve be a part of this for me was just, it was not just an added bonus, but a big part of the selling point, because if I'm being very honest, Steve and the team at Westland had been a supporter of what we do and what we've been doing since almost the very beginning. And really bought into our vision and wanted to be a part of that, and saw the reach that we had through our bottlings and in our nation membership and that, and to have someone who believed in us so much, to be working with that person really means a lot. And I think over the years, some of my favorite episodes of One Nation Under Whiskey has been with Steve and Matt Hoffman. Now both previously of Westland, but doing our April Fools episodes and just having an absolute blast doing that. So,
and you need those advocates, as independent companies, as without pressure. You need those advocates at the distilleries who really understand what you're trying to do and why it matters and why it's such a critical part of the industry. It's so important to being successful, and then, as you say, getting the chance to work alongside them is great.
Yeah. Well, listen, we appreciate that you believe in what we do so much so that you said, "Hey, come join the team." It really means a lot to Jason and I.
Absolutely.
To have Single Cask Nation be part of the Artisanal Spirits Company team. It's quite special. Yeah.
It's very exciting. Very exciting. I mean, all through the kind of Christmas, because we sort of knew we were getting closer, we were almost there, and it's just that moment when it was actually T's crossed, I's dotted, docu-signed. It's not the same as signing with a nice proper pen, but when it was all.
I'm still holding my pen.
He's still holding the pen. It's such a great moment, and now the fun is that that's just us at the start line. We now get to go and actually go and do it.
Yeah, after quiet, secret side negotiations, to be shouting this from the rooftops for all of 2024 and beyond feels remarkable. And we are so excited to get to work and expand globally and select more casks and introduce more distilleries. Yeah. The sky isn't even the limit.
Absolutely. And now you've learned that critical thing. Going to make some money. Going to make some great whiskies. Going to get these bottles in front of people around the world. It's going to be amazing.
There you go.
Nice.
There you go.
And I'm going to learn some financial maths along the way. Hell, we might even make some money.
Andrew, thanks again so much for joining us, taking time out, and it's a busy day for all of us because today is announcement day. But what a perfect day to be having this conversation and sharing a little dram with you. And I got some show notes here. We're meant to release 4 Ardmores per year minimum. Is that correct?
A month.
A month.
I think it's a month.
Oh man!
You can have 4 25-year-olds or 100-year-olds. Well, I can't think of anything.
Ardmore Cask Nation.
Exactly. I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing than sitting and chatting whiskey with you guys. It's been a real pleasure. And to get to talk to the nation for the first time, and can't wait to get to speak to some more and hopefully meet some people in due course. It's brilliant, very exciting. I genuinely can't wait. Can't go over it.
Brilliant. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, cheers to you and cheers to that.
Sincere thanks to Andrew for, as we said in that interview, joining us on the busiest of busy days, which for him may very well just be, a day of the week that ends in Y. For you and I, that was a lot of emails and a lot of texts. And here's the thing. Here's how I know we're living in 2024. I didn't receive one single phone call looking to discuss what had happened.
Oh, that is so interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I received emails. I received texts. I received WhatsApps and Facebook notifications. But no phone calls.
Not a single phone call, which, hallelujah, I'm on board with that one. So, it was really, it was an exciting day, and it really, that interview fed into the excitement of the day. And hopefully the takeaway here is there's the CEO of Artisanal Spirits Company that now owns Single Cask Nation. It was easy talking to him. It was easy talking whiskey with him. It didn't feel like we were talking to our new corporate overlords, right? And he said it in the press release. He said it in the interview. This is a meeting of minds, right? This is what have Jason and Joshua done with Single Cask Nation? How have they worked with Jess on that? How could they benefit from having someone of the caliber of Steve Hawley in the room? Like, it's a simple get to work, right? Go forth, do what you do. Now you've got support. I'm on board with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's listening back to that conversation. I loved how easy it was, and that's how it was from the first conversation. He's just a guy that you can get on with, and the whole team, and the whole team.
He's not an outlier.
Yeah, no,
he represents the entire team like that.
It's such a good point. And we said that in our conversation with Mark Gillespie. You get to meet the team and realize, oh, man, you've known these people for a while, or you've known of their names, and now to get to work with them, and to get to work with Steve Hawley, I think is really a highlight for me. He's someone that I respect such a great deal, and the future is so bright, Jason. I've got to wear shades.
If I don't interject at this point saying how excited I am to talk to Steve or work with Steve, does that get me in trouble? Do I need to go on the record saying I too am very excited?
We're just going to leave that there. Listen, I've got an important question for you, and it's a question that we didn't ask Andrew Dane, and I purposely did not want to ask Andrew this question because
I can only imagine what's about to come out of your mouth.
Oh, I was going to throw in a naughty joke, but I'm not going to. And now, having said that I was going to, there's a meta joke for you. My question for you, Jason, is what has you excited for the next 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What? This is a question we always pose to our interviewees.
Yeah.
But this involves us.
Yeah. There are so many aspects I can pull from. Do I really have to select one? Like, does it have to be my top of the top?
Oh, no. I mean, no one ever selects one. You always ask that, like, listen back to our interviewers and what is the one thing? And they say, okay, hold on, let me get this laundry list. Like, yeah, answer as you like.
Okay, so I have spent 2, perhaps 3 years contemplating what strategic global expansion looks like for Single Cask Nation. And we now have a corporate partner who can help us define and discern what that looks like.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's really huge. And while, yes, I'm very excited about the American-based nation and growing membership and bringing a bit more Scotch back to that proposition while curating an ever-increasing selection of American single malt whiskey, bourbon, rye. That is definitely exciting. I've seen the work Jess has been doing.
Yeah.
I've seen the work we've been trying to do with Jess. And I think that can be even richer than what we've achieved to date. And so I think even as we stop using the term rest of world and we start talking about specific global markets, I think there's something very exciting in all of that. And again, you know, for our listeners down there, who we've got no representation down there, I'm excited that 2024 can be the beginning of something there, but then further global markets on top of that. So there you go. I tried to focus my answer while still giving a good old nod to the US side of the nation. I have to, of course, ask you in return, what has you most excited as we enter this through 2024?
Well, before I get into that, just with the idea that there may be more listeners to this particular episode than we have had previously, people that may be new.
That would be nice.
Right? Be new to the podcast.
Welcome.
It's important to point out that when we use the term, quote unquote, down there, we're referring to Australia, right? New Zealand, Tasmania. And it comes from the fact that I didn't want to say down under because it just sounded like pandering to those, you know, the American understanding and like it's all Paul Hogan and that's not an off, this is an off. And, you know, so I said down there and
It's so funny you take a moment to make this point because earlier on in today's episode, I purposely used the word podcast instead of padcast because I wanted to be welcoming to new listeners. So awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They'll eventually understand that.
Eventually.
My limitations when it comes to the English language has become a series of sayings throughout this now 8 years of this podcast here. You know, it's right. And this is one of the reasons, Jason, that our partnership from the get-go just simply makes sense because the number one thing that I thought of when it comes to what am I most excited for when it comes to Single Cask Nation moving forward is this idea of growing our global markets. You know, we spent the first, 8 years growing our business within the
Indeed.
U.S., first online and then expanding to various markets within the country here. We're now, I think, in 27, 28 different states. And then bringing Jess on in 2019, we expanded into a number of different markets: Germany, Israel, Sweden, UK, Japan, etc. And I know it was an incomplete Joshua Hatton list. We also put some whiskey into South Africa, and
Canada.
Yeah, and Canada, and thank you. See, I have to stop listing people out. But
did you say Germany?
I think I said Germany.
Maybe you did.
Anyway,
in
speaking with Andrew in our conversation that we just listened back to, he talks about the SMWS being in 30 global markets. Right, we're going to go from being in 7 to 8 countries to accessing a number of these different markets, and that's so special to me. This is an idea that you and I concocted from being bloggers in the very late aughts and the early 2010s, and to then grow that into something that is recognized worldwide has been special, and now we're only expanding that, and that's really exciting to me. It's also a lot of pressure too. Like that's a big job, and thinking about how we need to understand those markets and bottle for those markets while still ensuring those bottlings fit our own flavor profiles. I think that's some hard work. I mean, it sounds like hard work, and it really, you guys got to taste,
I'm sweating
right?
Just listening to you.
But it is, it's like the German palate is different from the American palate, is different from the Australian palate, and so on and so forth. And I'm excited to grow into these markets and understand how to best bottle whiskeys that we love for those markets.
Yeah, there's a part of me as well is asking that question. You talk about a little bit of the pressure, a little bit of the responsibility. For me, there's a bit of this. We've championed American single malt whiskey in America, and we're seeing a rising tide there, and it's nice to have friends there and be working in a common direction. But now I'm starting to think about American single malt overseas, and the role that we could potentially play in that, and that's really exciting. We've got Jess, who it's obviously, we've discussed it many times, a champion of Westland Distillery. And now we've got Steve Hawley on board, who obviously did incredible work with Westland Distillery. and leads up the American Single Malt Whisky Commission. Like, you couldn't get any more American single malt when it comes to Steve Hawley, right? Right. And so I'm asking that question of what can we even do with American single malt whiskey overseas? That is so cool, and something to really get excited about. So, yeah, the world is our oyster. Yeah, I think too. There are other American distilleries that we haven't worked with that we know. Oh gosh, right? So Christ, 180 that we haven't worked with. I mean, really, 2,500 and some odd that we haven't worked with. I was only referencing the ones who produce single malt. Well, there's that, but there's a number of American producers that we haven't had relationships with that we know. Artisanal have relationships with, and that's another exciting thing for us. We've been working with a series of brokers in a series of distilleries, but it's all been limited. And now we have access to a number of distilleries, be it here in the U.S. or globally, that we now have access to, and we get to tell new stories. And that, I think, is really exciting because in the end, that's what we have been doing. We've been telling stories through flavor and sometimes designing those stories from casks to sort of this, this internal cinematic world where we bottle whiskey from this distillery and then use that cask to finish whiskey from that distillery. And, now we have a larger pool of distilleries to extend that storytelling with and how whiskey can be changed and shaped because it's malleable and we're going to form it to our likings. And that's fun. Yeah. Oh, without any shadow of a doubt. Yeah, it's... listen, as you and I are waxing lyrical, we know there's a nation, we know there's a One Nation Under Whiskey listenership who may very well have questions of their own. And we have our annual mailbag episode coming up in the early part of February. We're going to have our usual January 31 deadline to get questions in, but more than ever, we would love to hear from the nation. We'd love to hear from the global listenership of One Nation Under Whiskey. Please drop an email to info@singlecasknation.com or questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com. No E in whiskey. The mailbag episode is going to be myself and Joshua, as always, with Jess, glad to have her, and Steve Hawley. And it'll be the first time we have Steve Hawley on as our partner in crime, as opposed to our Westland partner in crime. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And maybe we'll have our own questions for Steve based on some of the texts we've received along the way. As well as emails that are coming in here. But this really is an opportunity, and we love this annual tradition. We love putting this back to listeners and members of the nation to give you a chance to have your voice heard, to have your questions asked. And I know you'll come up with the best questions, the very best questions that are filled with the best words.
Yeah, listen, I couldn't have said it better. It'll be great to hear from our listeners, from the nation, and I'm excited to answer these questions, and I know that there's going to be a lot. So please reach out and listen, Jason. These first 13 years of our whiskey journey together has been such a highlight in my own life, and to now, be able to, leave my current day job of Impex Beverages and now join you 100% in this endeavor with Jess and with Steve and now with the backing of the Artisanal Spirits Company. I'm excited for this next chapter, and I love the way that you said that, right? People say end of an era, and it's not. That was chapter 1. We're now in chapter 2. Well, maybe we're in chapter 7 at this point. But, we're not in chapter 7.
I think we're a little deeper into the. I think we're a little deeper into the book at this point.
And so I'm excited for this new chapter in our journey, and fuck if it isn't going to be a special part of our journey.
Well, and I think hot on the heels of what you just said there, and the proof is in the pudding is one of my favourite expressions. We've always said wonderful, complimentary things about Impex distilleries, but not because they were Impex distilleries, but because they were distilleries that we firmly believe in.
Yeah.
You will continue to hear us say wonderful things about Kilchoman and Ardnamurchan and Glenallachie and Indre and Milk and Honey, and I will say etc. at this point because it's true, right? Yeah. And I think this is where, if we have spent years saying, and we're not just saying that because Joshua's wearing his Impex hat, right? There is no Impex hat. It's all Single Cask Nation hats going forward.
Yeah. Yep.
And we still love those distilleries, buy from those distilleries, select from those distilleries, support those distilleries. Nation, listeners, One Nation Under Whiskey, you will hear us continue to love on the same distilleries while adding ever more.
Yeah, and just in case any of our distributor partners, and by distributor partners I mean here in the U.S., are curious about Single Cask Nation and my departure from Impex, what that may mean. The good news is Impex will continue to import Single Cask Nation whiskeys. My leaving isn't the end of our relationship with Impex. No. It's just the next chapter, if you will, in our relationship with Impex. And, at the end of the day, we share a vision, and being with Impex is where we want to be. It's where we need to be, and we're looking forward to growing with them.
Indeed.
With that said, Jason, with all of that said, thank you again to Andrew Dane. We're excited to be working with you and the rest of the team at ASC.
Indeed.
And Jason and Jess, who isn't with us, but I raise my glass to her. The three of us have been quite the team, and I'm just looking for us to move forward and in the most positive of ways. This is more exciting than can be expressed in words.
Yep. I'm going to get out of here by saying thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to the nation. Thank you to you, Joshua, and Jess and the Artisanal team and Andrew Dane. And I'm going to say onward and upward.